Have you ever played a top-down dungeon crawler and thought to yourself, these levels are cool and all, but what I really want is to create my own dungeons? Well, that's the premise of Super Dungeon Maker. Create your own dungeons and then share them online so other players can attempt to beat them. The game begins with your avatar, who appears to be a little chicken fella, waking up in a small dungeon that acts as your tutorial. You'll quickly learn the basic mechanics of the game and be introduced to different equipment items that you can utilise to navigate through dungeons, such as a grappling hook to traverse long distances, bombs to reveal secret doorways, and flippers that allow you to traverse water. One thing to note is that these equipment items are not permanent upgrades and are only usable within the same dungeon you found them in. Every dungeon provides a fresh start so that all players are equal. When you emerge from the tutorial dungeon, you'll find yourself in the Overworld, which is a small area that has 4 main functions. A tutorial that teaches you the basics of creating your own dungeon, 2 small dungeons which act like advanced tutorials to give players a practical environment to test all the things they learnt from the original tutorial, and then you have the main focus of the game. A building that allows you to create your own dungeons, and another building that allows you to play other people's dungeons. The Overworld also has a bunch of NPCs scattered around that may reveal gameplay hints or spout generic flavor text if you interact with them. So, on to the core of the game, the dungeon creation. The creation tools are fairly robust and allow you to create a variety of different types of dungeons. You could build one comprised entirely of traps that the player has to avoid, create one that's a grueling combat gauntlet, or create one with puzzles that require some critical thinking. It's entirely up to you. Sharing your dungeons and playing other people's dungeons is incredibly simple and only involves clicking a few buttons. For some reason, the devs have chosen not to integrate Steam Workshop support, opting instead for a third-party solution. I'm assuming this allows them to maintain the online support if they should choose to release the game on additional platforms, but as of right now, Super Dungeon Maker is only available on Steam. In this part of the video, I'll outline the good and the not so good parts of the game, and ultimately whether or not I think the game is worthy of a purchase. To start with, the concept of the game is really cool. I've played many games where I've thought that being able to create your own levels would greatly enhance the game. Adding the ability to share said levels with your friends sounds like an amazing concept. Unfortunately, Super Dungeon Maker takes that really cool idea and just kind of sits on it. It doesn't develop that idea into something more, something greater, and I think it has the potential to be much more than just a simple dungeon making game. The game seems to market itself as a fun social experience where you can challenge your friends to beat your dungeon, but in its current state I can imagine how a conversation between 2 friends would go. Oh hey, did you manage to beat my dungeon yet? Oh, yeah, I did. That part where you had to move the block to reveal the bomb location was pretty cool. And then that's it. You can't even add interesting tags to your dungeon so people can filter by tag to find it. You have to manually type in the name of the dungeon, or enter the unique ID key that's given to the uploader when they upload the dungeon. There are no leaderboards or anything like that to prove who beat the dungeon, or who managed to beat it in the fastest time, or who beat it without taking any damage. I think expanded concepts like that would really help sell the social aspect of the game. It would help elevate the game from a simple dungeon creation game to something slightly grander and ultimately cooler. I get the impression that the developers have set the bar too low for themselves and don't want to help the core concept flourish. Obviously, all of this is purely subjective and I could be completely wrong. I may be blinded by my own bias and may have unreasonable expectations of this game, but I cannot recommend it in its current state. Granted, it is still in early access and could be different by the time it releases. Overall, Super Dungeon Maker does do what it sets out to do pretty well, but it's just being held back, and that's such a shame. It could be so much more than what it currently is, and what it wants to be. With that being said though, I do wish the developers all the best, and I will be keeping an eye on the game to see if it does end up expanding in scope. In my opinion, the game has an absolutely fantastic core concept, but it just needs that little nudge in order to go a little bit further. Huge thanks to Firechick and or Rocaplay for providing me with a review copy of their game. If Super Dungeon Maker seems like your cup of tea, then you can find a link to the Steam page in the description of the video. And thank you, the viewer, ever so much for listening to me waffle on about video games. I'll be back in the next video.